You want this chair or that?
There you go ahead and see. I'll sit.
Alright. Hey guys, this is Dave here. I'm sitting here with my good buddy Chris Allen, another investigator and researcher of the paranormal. Chris, say hi to everybody.
Hi everybody, how are you? Beautiful full moon night. Having a beautiful campfire here at the lake. And Dave came up to do a little information interview with me. So nice to meet your acquaintance.
Yeah, man. So, we've been talking about doing some projects together, and you're actually going to be in my new Sasquatch book coming out early next year. You want to share any of one of your stories or part of it? Don't share all of it because we want them to read the book.
I've had a lifetime of acknowledgement with Bigfoot, and
let's stop and regroup here. Let's tell them about yourself, what you've done over your time, and what you do. And
I'm a recording artist out of Nashville. I had 8 world top 10 hit songs. Only ended my career because I was attacked by a domestic terrorist who made me lose $1 million deal on Curb Records. Broke 7 bones in my face. And then later, I was picked back up with Skip Saylor, SKIPSAYLOR. Look up skipsaylor.com, the largest producer on earth. And Skip was working with me with my new album, number 5, which we haven't finished yet. And I also host several radio shows on GHTR, GHTalkradio.com. Look under DJ, you'll find me. I own a company in Charleston, West Virginia called Superstar Entertainment. This is what I do for a living, is entertain. I do music. I do every kind of performance there is, solo acts. But on the side, when I was with my band, I travel across the entire United States and around the world looking for Bigfoot, unexplained things like the Jersey Devil, Bigfoot, Ghost. And I get called out on a lot of shows. And my radio show called Chris Allen's Worldwide Monster Theater, we've had a lot of well-known people on my show as guests. And I've worked with a lot of well-known people like Jane Goodall. And we are hardcore enthusiasts to look for Bigfoot. Ghosts are cool, but I'm really into the cryptid side.
Yeah, man. So give us, tell the folks about one of your Squatch experiences.
Well, the most scariest Sasquatch experience I've ever had in my life was my number 3 sighting. And we're at a lake called Sherwood Lake, West Virginia. And there were 3 of them there. And they were actually ripping bark off of trees and running it down their face like they were licking the bark. We didn't understand until years later what they were doing. And they were possibly eating the crickets, the insects that were living under the bark. And when we seen this, the smallest one was probably 7 foot. The tallest of the 3 was probably 12 foot, give or take a foot. We went out and measured the trees, and they were, that's pretty accurate size of how big they were. Me and my oldest son, we took off running back to our campsite as fast as we could. And that really scared the hell out of me, because what are these creatures? That was my 3rd sighting, and it had 3 in one sighting. This being said, I started going around the entire United States looking for something. I wanted to find out what is there. There's a lot of non-believers. There are a lot of people that just do not believe in Bigfoot. That's fine. I was one of those people at one time too. But when you see it, you will never forget it, and you will swear to it for the rest of your life. I have seen 11 of them in my lifetime. I have been blessed to see 11 because a lot of my fellow researchers that have researched longer than I have, some of them have not even seen one. They may have had hundreds of near encounters, but not actually encountering. I have seen 11 of them, and I think my research has refined itself to why I have been so fortunate, because I'm a musician. I camp a lot with my children. If you're out there in the woods as a hunter with a gun, you probably will not see one. If you go camping with your wife and your children, they laugh and they play a child's laughter, and you show no remorse, no hatred, like, you're not cussing at the world, and you play the guitar and you sing, you probably have a greater chance of seeing it. And I carry my guitar with me everywhere I go. I've had it around the world. and I play guitar and sing a lot, and seem to be attracted to music. I'm not saying that's what it is, but it seems to be why I've had such a successful rate of seeing them.
So, it's one thing we often talk about as researchers and stuff. People just don't understand. Just West Virginia, for instance, I don't think most people live in suburban or metropolitan areas. They don't understand why we call it wild, wonderful West Virginia
Yeah,
to begin with, because the state's literally, guys, is just nothing but mountains and woods. I mean, literally, most people that live in the state live in the bigger cities like Charleston and Huntington and Morgantown and other places like that. But 5, 10, 15 miles out of those cities, it's rugged wilderness
exactly.
everywhere. And there's caves, there's plenty of cover, there's plenty of food for a large bipedal creature that we call Bigfoot to survive in this environment.
You're exactly right. Now flying across America many times, um, I always get the window seat. I'm looking out the window, and for hundreds of miles, you'll travel without even seeing a house.
Hmm.
That's going coast to coast. One time, I actually flew with Eddie Money sitting right next to me, which was a treat. And aside from the music, and aside from the Bigfoot, I asked him, Eddie Money, is like, Eddie, do you do a lot of music? Oh, I do a few shows. And he got off the airplane with me in Detroit, and he sang to me one of his new songs about the American soldiers, which I'm very patriotic. And I looked at his website up, eddiemoney.com, and the man stays booked up about every day of the year. He's so modest. He's so cool. But regardless, the point was, I noticed many countless miles flying over the Rockies and all the mountain ranges, and I have been to 48 states year round looking for Bigfoot. I have been to every state dozens of times, and I've had more research experience living here in West Virginia, but I've had more encounters in West Virginia due to the amount of time I spend here.
See, I find that very significant because you've traveled all across the country in CONUS, not going to Alaska. Have you been to Alaska?
I have not.
So you haven't been to Alaska or Hawaii or any of those areas searching for a Squatch, but yet you've been to every other state, and all of your sightings are in West Virginia, right?
The
Except for
majority of
a
my sightings
majority of
have
them.
been in West Virginia, yes. I've had countless encounters, like in Tennessee. I've had a lot of encounters. I never really quite got to see what was throwing rocks, logs, branches at me in Tennessee, but there's abundant of them around the lakes. Center Hill Lake, Land Between the Lakes, J. Piercy Priest Lake. Um, in fact, Jane Goodall invited me to a research in northern Tennessee where she guaranteed me sighting had I went there, but I was in Nebraska at the time and could not get there in time. Um, I've had a lot of activity in northern Tennessee, even on the Pigeon Forge area, Claman Dome. I've camped in places that you legally are not allowed to camp. I broke laws, not knowing I was breaking laws, camping out there. Um, but there was a lot of activity out there. I've camped year round. I've camped in blizzards. I've camped actually in two blizzards, uh, and I've looked year round. Colorado had a lot of activity, and I believe a lot of my fellow researchers they actually think that the Bigfoot is migratory. I'm not arguing that it's not, but in West Virginia, your deers do not migrate. Your food sources do not migrate. They stay here. If you're in Colorado, your elk will go to the higher and lower feeding grounds. That would be migratory for the Bigfoot. The caribou in Canada and Alaska would be migratory. But here in West Virginia, they're pretty well stationary. But I've had more than one encounter of different species of the Bigfoot. I've actually had an encounter of my latest was the dog-faced Bigfoot. It looks exactly like what you would think that a Hollywood werewolf would look like.
Some people call those a dog man. I mean,
There's
there's
a lot of
various
different
names for
names.
them.
Just like
So,
Bigfoot has 1,000 different names, Skookum, Hairy Man,
Yehu.
Yeti. It's the same creature of a different species. There's supposedly 5 species of a Bigfoot. I've encountered several different types of species of a Bigfoot. My third encounter was what I would call a Gigantopithecus blackie, which is the largest of the Bigfoot family. And if you look up Manitoba Bigfoot on YouTube, you'll see exactly what a Gigantopithecus blackie is. Their head is a cone shape,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe this is what you'll have in your story, your book, where it put its head on my chest when I'm in my tent in a cot. This is a massively large creature that fears no man. There's absolutely no fear of any of the Bigfoots that I've encountered of man. We fear it because we don't know what it is. I have got to the point that I really just don't care anymore. I'm going to prove to the world that they exist. If it takes my life, it takes my life. If it doesn't, and I can prove to the world successfully, safely, that's the only concern I have.
Well, certainly we all hope you can prove to the world. We all want to do that, unfortunately, no one's got a body of any sort. Or there's also talk of people collecting DNA via hair or scat, but when they send those samples off, mysteriously they never come back.
It depends on where you send them.
So
We send ours to the government agencies, so that's a big mistake.
yeah, don't send it to them.
Well, in Washington, let me ask you this: why is it against the law to shoot a Bigfoot if they don't exist?
Exactly. There's other states that are coming out with those laws too now.
A lot of states have that. They'll confiscate your gun. They'll imprison you if you shoot a Bigfoot. A friend of mine, he made a comment on your recent on your post on Facebook, Bob. He invented a 50 caliber gun, which was a tranquilizer gun that's already existence. But there's a tranquilizer 50 caliber gun that they designed and made a barb that if you can actually shoot a Bigfoot with this tranquilizer, it has like a spring load dart on it. It hits the animal, and when it bounces off, it collects the DNA, but it leaves a little, what you put in your dogs that will track your dogs down.
A little chip, yeah.
A microchip, so you could track the Bigfoot.
That's a great idea.
He's one of the smartest men. He's a scientist. He's one of the smartest. I don't know if I can pronounce his name, but it's Bob Schlamek. I've been all over the United States with this man. I've been in many states with the man. He's an amazing person. I love working research with this man. We actually went to Pennsylvania one time, and we found some little areas that were made on the side of a cliff where logs were placed up along the cliffside, leaves piled up over top of it, where it was denning near trails. Was this man-made? Was this made by Bigfoot? We'll never know the answer to that. But looking at the size, looking at the intricacy of it, I found little huts that were made the size of my tent that they took vines and twisted them, something that humans just do not do. And one of my researches that I listened to a lot of my people that were on my show, Chris Allen's Worldwide Monster Theater, like for example, J.C. Johnson. J.C. Johnson has taught me a lot being on my show a few times. But we followed Indian legends, and I stayed at the in Arizona one time for a month, 5 weeks actually, in a blizzard. And Rob Price was my bodyguard that went with me, and we stayed on top of this mountain out atop of Seligman, Arizona. And I found a petrograph in a little, what's the word? It's like a little creek that has a waterfall in it that stays dry most of the year until you have your rains.
Right.
We went in there. And
when I lived out west, we call them gulches or an arroyo.
We went underneath the gulch, and there was a drawing that was underneath there. It was of a skookum, what I would assume was a skookum, but it had a glass-looking like bowl over its head.
Well, that's freaking weird.
That was really weird. I mean, like, are we talking about Chewbacca?
So let me ask you this, Chris, on your your personal opinion. We all have opinions on as to what these creatures are. Do you feel that they are some kind of elemental entity like the Native Americans believe, or do you feel it's a living, breathing flesh creature?
I believe it's a living, breathing flesh creature. Now, they've coincided with the Native Americans lived here from, if you look up in history, from 10,000 to over 30,000 years they've lived here in America. I'm half Cherokee, I'm half Irish. And looking at the lineage of my family side, that got me to do what J.C. Johnson and several other researchers have done. I followed my lineage. I went out and I started researching alongside with the different like the Pawnee. They were carnivorous, and so were the hairy man.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they raided a village that killed every man in the village except for a few that escaped, went to the nearby village, who came back with a bunch of warriors who found the cave that they were living in, and sagebrush
Mm-hmm.
smoked them out and rained full of fire of arrows at them and killed many of them.
Yeah, me and David Weatherly. We were out west, and we actually ended up going to Lovelock Cave, which is a Paiute legend of that. And we explored this cave, and there was many things that, over the years, that were found in this cave. They actually found 15-inch sandals it buried in this cave.
Wow.
Now, back in the Native Americans, the normal ones, there wasn't anyone that big
No.
way back then. And these legends were, Native Americans pass their legends, their history down through oral tradition,
They're
as
very
you know.
accurate. They have no sense of humor.
Right.
The Native
And
Americans tell exactly the way it is,
exactly.
with no humor whatsoever.
And there was room. There was also they called them the red-haired giants. The Paiute legend says, and they told these tales, passed them down over the generations, and the story was very similar to what you just said, except for the fact that the red-haired giants in the Paiute legend would have these baskets with spikes in them, and they would throw the people in them so they couldn't get out, and then they'd take them and eat them, and then they were cannibals, and they would eat people.
Several species of the Bigfoot
So
through the Indian legend were cannibalistic.
Yep. And they did the same thing. They got them all cornered in a cave with a whole bunch of tribes together and smoked them out, burned them up. And the ones that did come out, they killed them, and the other ones they said they burned up in this cave. And there's actually some government things that were discovered, and they found giant skeletons in this cave, and those were all removed, and the cave was covered in various spots.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
Well, I've actually found caves in Center Hill, West Virginia, on the side of the highway that I've camped in for a week at 19 degrees during the daytime. Me and my buddy Stephen Scott Smith.
Well, it's nice and toasty in those caves.
It's actually 50-something degrees,
Mm-hmm.
which is toasty compared to 19 outside. We've camped in the cave, and we found giant, what I would call like a nest that was built where you'd have to take many long leaf bags full of leaves to make a nest the size that we found a mile inside the earth. Think about this. If you didn't have mortgages, no car payments, no house payments, no divorce, you live on the land like the Native Americans did. You collect berries, you catch your fish, your turtles, your clams, everything you need to sustain your life as they do. What a peaceful world this could be. We have no democracy if you were a Bigfoot. The Bigfoot actually lives better than what a human would live. Look at our world around us. We're falling apart right now. We are destroying Earth. We have pharmaceutical companies, GMOs. We have so much toxins in this world. They don't have this. They live in a very tranquil world that have to deal with humans. And that's the way it has been through the Indian legend for tens of thousands of years, that they coincide with the Americans, not just American. I was in Mindanao. I was in Cebu in the Philippines this past January. I went around the world, and I was going to Mindanao to do research because Bigfoot is called Capri in the Philippines. They're very common in the Philippines. They're very well known. A lot of Philippines see them on a regular basis. The farmer Philippines, not the city people, the farmers that grow the coffee beans on the hectares of coffee farms, etc. My soon-to-be father-in-law, he has had many encounters. My fiance was in Malaysia, in Brunei. She encountered one in Brunei recently. She encountered in the Philippines also as well. In the mountainous region of the Philippines, they're quite common.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing like in America.
It's a worldwide phenomenon, really. I mean,
every country.
Yeah, almost
country.
every country in the world has some story of a giant that lives in the woods. A hairy giant.
I have a friend that was awarded in Vietnam War. He actually has a lightning bolt tattooed on his arm with a 1 and a 9 on the side of it. Charlie 19. The Ghost Walkers. He was awarded for the most kills in Vietnam. and he was telling me his stories of these gigantic things that you're walking through the forest in Vietnam, and all of a sudden something giant just goes out in front of you. You just light it up with your machine gun, and it takes off running. What was it? You know, he was a skeptic. He did not. He was hardcore. Did not believe in Capri or Bigfoot, but he was asking me as a professional researcher, what was that took off? We're talking about something way, way, way larger than a gorilla. Well, if you look up,
Well, they move totally different than a gorilla. They move more like a person.
I've seen them move fluently on 4, and I've seen them move on 2. I was crossing the road in Marmet, West Virginia, at the cemetery, and if you look up on BFRO, you'll find a lot of people that have seen them at the cemetery in Marmet for some odd reason at the cemetery. How a razorback would run so smooth, like it's floating, but amazing speed. Now, you know, I have been behind a bear in my Jeep. I drove right behind a bear at 30 miles an hour, and when I got close to the bear, it shot off to 35 miles an hour for a long distance. This was way faster than that bear, and it was so smooth, and it ran just like what you would imagine like a greyhound dog would run on all 4s.
See, just that story right there alone just makes me wonder. You know, some people, like I said, some people think. I've interviewed Native Americans too that say they think there's some kind of interdimensional creature that they can just pop in and pop out. You know, or they're, you know, some kind of alien or whatever. You know, just to see something that large and move that fast would be mind-boggling. I know the one I saw when I was a kid. It was walking like me and you, and it was pissed, and it was knocking big ass trees down.
If you listen to
it wasn't moving on all 4s.
If you listen and study the Native Americans, for example, how God created the earth, their Bible belief is exactly like our Bible belief, but it's a little more theatrical, different. But side by side coincides with the American Bible. It's not the American Bible; it's King James Bible.
King James.
Yeah. But I'm saying.
But they also talk of the star people.
Well, if you look in the Jewish Bible,
it talks of that too.
It talks about the Bigfoot, the giant protector of the forest.
Yep.
Several versions of the religions talk about the giants of the forest. Even King James talks about that.
Yep.
I'm not saying David and Goliath was a Bigfoot.
No, it's two. I think that's two different things they're talking.
But it talks about the giants. And to conclude that, it tells you that there are a lot of things in this world that we will never understand until we enter heaven, to where it's explained to us. If this is a 3-dimensional creature, then that may be what the Bible tells us. To make it real simple, if you take a German Shepherd and run it through your flashlight, zigzagging, you would never know it was a German Shepherd if you didn't know that was your dog or a bear. Because black does not reflect light. It absorbs light. If you took something that was a dark, furry, complected creature, you would not see it. Now, let me conclude something. I used to raise wolves. I had a gray wolf, and I was told I had to set it free. I raised it, rehabilitated it, and set it free. We set it free in the woods around us. We videotaped all around us, 360. We never seen the wolf again. After we took the photos and we enlarged the photos, plain as day, there was the wolf looking back at us at 100 yards away. You would never see that wolf because it's so perfectly blended in with the woods.
Yep.
I mean, it was standing out in the open in the trees, but you would never see that wolf because it blended in so perfect with its environment.
Right.
So that got me doing a little bit experimental research. I told on my radio shows before, listen, if you're primitive camping, think like what a Bigfoot might think like. Find the trees that you would hide behind to spy on the campers.
Yep.
Go behind those trees, lay little branches, little twigs on the ground. Okay? And then go back 2 or 3 days later and take pictures of those twigs with your camera. And we did this countless times. Those twigs that you'd find were often broken. I'm not saying it was a Bigfoot, but I'm talking about miles away from humans, in the woods, primitive camping. Those branches from those trees behind them were broken, where something stepped on them.
I talk about that too a lot on these shows that I'm on, Chris. Like, I tell people, you know, most folks in today's world, they don't pay attention to their surroundings. They're more concentrated on their cell phones and their everyday, 9 to 5 jobs, the kids, what do they got to make for dinner, whatever. And a person could hide 20 yards in their front yard behind a tree and they'd never see them,
exactly.
never know they were there. So if you think about that just in general, a Sasquatch is most likely a highly intelligent creature, number one.
Oh, definitely.
And it's going to hide right there, and you'll never see it. Just like you said, you'll never see it. You'll never know it's there unless it wants you to know it's there.
In your book that I'm in, the first encounter, it sat there and groomed its arm and watched us.
Mm-hmm.
There's 15 or 20 of us in the yard watching it, not far away at all, closer than to hear the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting there watching it, and it was not even scared of us at all. Like we were its family member or something. It wasn't, it had no fear at all of us.
So
Right.
obviously it's probably been there before and been right around people, so that in itself tells you something.
And I actually studied when my youngest son, which now he was my second to the youngest son, when Colt was nearly attacked by a dog-faced Bigfoot, the Dogman.
Mm-hmm.
It ran into the woods, and I ran after it with a Colt 45 in my hand. It ran into the woods like I can't explain how easily it ran into the woods. I ran to the edge of the woods, and they were so thick, I actually thought I would hit the woods and bounce out on my butt 4 foot backwards. The next day I went out there, and I went into the woods, and I went into the kudzu vines, the river cane, and it was amazing. You have like highway trails go many directions in the woods. There were cross paths that went for miles that were very well traveled, that had been traveled apparently for many years. We're talking 2-3 foot wide paths that went through and you can't see the sun at all on a bright noon day. You cannot see the sun at all for miles because the kudzu vines completely choked out the sunlight. It had a beautiful iridescent green color to it. It was really amazing, and I suggest everybody watching this go out and find river cane on side of the rivers, find the kudzu vines. They're everywhere. You just may not realize what it is, and walk inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
You will be amazed. I mean, it was just mind blowing.
There's places here in West Virginia, and I think I told you this too. You can go out into the Monongahela, and there's places out there that are so remote and rugged. There's a human probably hasn't stepped foot in there in 100 years, if ever.
My backyard probably has 30 to 50 miles of
So
woods. If you Google Earth my yard, I mean, it's like forever of no houses, no nothing
Right.
behind my house. And this is one reason why I believe I had so much activity just in my own yard. And I've taken a friend of mine, Terry Bowman from Beckley. She's an RN, very well educated. I took her on my Honda Foreman 500 behind my yard just to go tracking because she's always teasing me. Hey, Bigfoot, you see any Bigfoots? She calls me Bigfoot. It's kind of insulting, but after a while you get used to it. It buffers off. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to take you out here and I'm going to look for the tracks that I just seen a few weeks ago. I had no idea one would run across the road in front of us. We're traveling 20, 30 miles an hour on my Honda. And one that was orangutan orange ran across the road in 2 steps. The hillside was so steep you could not climb it without a rappelling rope. You can't. It's impossible. It swung around a tree that was the size of my calf. It swung around the tree and went over the hill just like that. I had a Canon T5i camera on my neck, turned on. All I had to do was grab it and snap a picture. It happened so fast, there was no way in the world I could have grabbed my camera
Yep,
and snapped it.
that happens to a lot of people. They have the cameras right there, but and even with a regular bear, deer, whatever, it's so hard to capture a wild animal.
That makes our job so unbelievable for the listener.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, if they're real, then why hasn't anyone captured a picture? They're not stupid. They're not like a glamour shot like here I am. They're not going to smile like here in the Hendersons.
I think people have captured some of the pictures and videos out there probably are legit, but people, no matter what, people are gonna say no, it's BS. It's not, it's not real.
Out there that ruin it for everybody.
Exactly, and that's
and you
a shame.
can always tell a hoaxer because when you see a Bigfoot walking across the road, it looks like a person with prison chains on their feet shuffling. That's fake.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, a Bigfoot has a gigantic step that a human's not going to walk. An adult size. Let me iterate that. A juvenile is different because smaller legs. People think a Bigfoot's going to have giant, 20-foot or 20-inch size feet. That's not true. That's not true at all. Depends on the size of a Bigfoot. A juvenile Bigfoot, like my first encounter, he was the size of me, maybe a little bit taller than me. His feet were probably bigger than mine. I wear a 9.5, 10 size shoe. Disproportional to its size is how they're going to be judged. Now, I've seen tracks that I've actually photocopied, and you can find me on Facebook, Chris Allen and Southern Thunder, Facebook, and it's Chris with a K. I found tracks that I've had that were every bit of 18 inches long. If I have Mari's power diving fins that I like to swim, scuba dive, and its tracks were the size of the fins on my feet. That's rare. That's very rare. Most of the tracks I've encountered are 12, 13 inches on the average that were extremely wide. Now, how do you know it's not a human? Well, first of all, what human's going to walk in the snow barefooted?
Exactly.
I have and the heels are a little different than our
What
heels.
human's going to walk out in the middle of the woods barefooted,
Yeah.
let alone in the snow? You know what I'm saying? I've come across tracks out in the middle of the woods. There's no way I would be walking out there in bare feet.
No, I've lived on my property for 41 years, and I've actually watched the tracks grow. I've documented the tracks growing from small, every year, bigger and bigger and bigger. I lived in the same property.
Hold on. We had something happen here.
Buffer.
Yeah. Hold on. There we go. Okay.
I lived on the same property since 1975. There's a particular Bigfoot that lives behind my house on the property and near the property. That its heel.
Don't tell nobody where you live because you'll have people showing up.
I have people showing up all the time just as groupies.
Well, that's different though.
Well, I mean, I'm a recording artist with 8 world hit songs. I live a very simple life. I raise chickens. I don't need to impress anybody. I'm very comfortable with living where I'm at. I could live in a cave. I could live in the woods. I could live in a tent. It doesn't matter to me. I don't need a fancy mansion. But the fact is, this is a creature that is very real. If you don't believe in it, I suggest you find me or Dave and come out on an expedition with us, and I will convince you differently of that. I promise you. You got to be devoted to what you're looking for. If you're a non-believer and you look with your eyes closed, you'll never see it. You'll never believe it. But if you open your mind and think, well, this might be real. Let me tell you something. The most extreme primatologist on earth, Jane Goodall, a friend of mine, she knows they're real. She studies them. She has seen many of them. She studies chimpanzees, gorillas, and she studies Bigfoot.
Every primate known.
This is Jane Goodall. Hello.
Yeah, and another thing too, Chris, speaking of her, they didn't even discover the mountain gorilla till 50 years ago.
Exactly.
And they're constantly discovering
new
species. Yeah, or the panda.
1918, they discovered the panda.
So you have all these different species that are still being discovered to this day. The possibilities, like you said, you have to have an open mind. You can't just, discount. There's too many sightings out there for all of them to be bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to me,
Eric the Red,
Yeah.
Ponce de Leon,
yeah,
Christopher Columbus, every discoverer that discovered America, where my family members were living here, they discovered us living here, that were coinciding with the Bigfoot.
Yep, for thousands of years.
Listen, I have a petrograph from the Pawnee Indians. I'm sorry, from the Adena Indians that was found on my property. 5,000 years. It was estimated to be 5,000 years from the state capital of West Virginia. All Native American tribes coincided with the Bigfoot. All Native American tribes. No exceptions. All Native American tribes. So are you telling me that these people were imaginary friends of a creature that didn't exist?
No.
Are you telling me that the discoverers that came here to discover a country,
the Europeans.
Are you telling me that millions of people have seen these creatures that were all liars?
It's just like me. That's the reason I'm doing this book. Because I have reports from people from all walks of life, all freaking disciplines, to include law enforcement, doctors, lawyers, children, people that would not make this stuff up because they have something to lose. Why would they make, you know what I'm saying? You're not going to have an officer of the law come out and say he had this crazy encounter with a large hairy giant, because he's going to be, number one, he's a law enforcement officer, you know. He has something to lose, his reputation.
Well, let me iterate on that. Now, a good friend of mine, which I've researched across America with, I have been from coast to coast in many states by the name of Bacardi. Did I say Bacardi like I have a hard time saying his name because people hate you just by hearing his name. He was on CNN. He found a Tom. He found a Bigfoot that he bought from a police officer, a correction officer, and another man of the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Now this man, Tom Biscardi, cried in my arms in Pennsylvania because it bothered him so deeply bad. Because he is a promoter. He's a Vegas promoter. Now, if you know what a salesperson is like, you're brought up as a sales. A carny is a carny. A salesperson is a salesperson.
Right.
He is a promoter. That's what he does. Now, if you can overlook that and understand, this man cried in my arms in Pennsylvania. I have professionally trekked across America with this man. He's a serious researcher, and this man is very athletic. He can hike faster than anybody you've ever known. I've hiked countless miles through the woods with this man. Java Bob Schleiman has worked with this man for years too, but he doesn't credit that because when he bought the Bigfoot for $50,000 on CNN, it discredited his credentials. They booed him off the stage. He was never to be heard of in that area again because people didn't want to hear it, because he sold tickets to people to come there to see this. Now, let me tell you the truth inside story of this. I know the real story. They were bought from a police officer and a correction officer and another man of the law. They bought a cooler with a Bigfoot body inside of it.
Supposed Bigfoot
body. Well, they were trying to get money off this. They wanted $100,000 for this body. And it was like, we can't do that. We need to collect DNA. We need the body defrosted from this cooler. They wanted the money, boom, just like that. So what they did, they drilled. First of all, they put kerosene heaters. They put electric heaters inside of a closed-in area. They heated that way up inside there. 3 days later, it barely put a dent in the ice. We're talking about a full-size chest freezer. So they drilled down in the face area and the stomach area, and they extracted DNA. Well, it came up that the DNA from the stomach had pig, other things inside of it. They had enamel from the mouth. So it was definitely real. It wasn't a fake thing. They wanted the money. They pressured Tom Biscardi for the money right then and there. So his investors gave him $50,000 to buy that.
Yep.
Found out it was an elaborate hoax. It was a famous Hollywood costume designer that made this, and they actually put pig guts inside the stomach and inside the mouth. Tom Biscardi was completely innocent of that.
Yep.
Tom Biscardi's only crime, if you call it that, was selling the tickets on CNN for people to come in live.
Yep.
That's a promoter talking to you. Now, that being said, I've actually had hands-on experience with this man in many states. Earlier, where I told you about, we found the cliff with the branches. He's a very serious researcher, and he takes it very serious. My hat's off to that man. I mean, I admire Tom.
The bottom line is he fell victim to hoaxers.
He fell victim to hoax, and it destroyed his credentials for that. And people that's worked with him were told, listen, if you talk about him, we're going to cut you off. I'm sorry that has to be said, but that's a true story between Tom Biscardi.
Yeah, I mean, let me do it. Hey guys, this is Dave Spinks and my friend Chris Allen. We're in the woods of West Virginia, hanging out, camping at the lake, and just talking a little squatch, man. Talking, just having fun, just sitting out and enjoying the fire. And thanks to you guys that are tuning in right now, and the ones that will see the replay of this. This is what we love to do. We live in wild, wonderful West Virginia, and we love the outdoors, and we love the paranormal and the supernatural world, and we like to sit around and talk shop.
Hmm. That's very true. One of my paranormal sides that I went through was a Corpsewood investigation, and I went down there with a man that's Lee Culver. He's a world-known traveler. In fact, let me go back before Lee Culver. The man that filmed Halley's Comet on CNN, when Halley's Comet was first picked up on CNN, Alan Rand. He owned Rand Instrument Corporation. He offered me a job making $100,000+ a year, and my job was to sell fiber optics telescopes to different countries, kind of like Nicolas Cage on Lord of War. You know, I turned it down because my first son was born. Who's going to turn down a $100,000 job? But he showed me pictures of their
Especially
CT.
back in those days, that was huge money.
It's huge money.
Huge money.
200,000 now.
Yeah, easily.
You know, he showed me a C10. He was showing me a C10 with bullet riddled from Columbia near the hydraulics on the fuselage where they shot flying over. Now this is back in cocaine days when people in Colombia were putting all kind. What's his name? Escobar.
Yeah, Pablo.
When they were putting all this cocaine in America.
Yep.
So we had a lot of people in South America that if you had an airplane flying over the jungle, you're going to be shot at because probably your DNA or somebody that shouldn't be there. But the point was, I was offered this job and I turned it down. Now, Lee Culver is a friend of Alan Rand's. Alan Rand is an extremist. He has his own battleship. He's a billionaire.
That's crazy.
He has his own battleship. Now, back then, they had telescopes. They could take helicopters with these telescopes and focus through a computer from telescope to telescope to telescope around the Earth and circle the globe through telescopes. He took me on we were on a Peachtree Industrial Boulevard in Atlanta, Georgia. He took me in this gymnasium that he showed me this tracks. It was set up just like a war field. I'm looking through nightlight stuff that you had your experience with, and I'm looking at these tracks going up the hillside, and on top was a tank. And he's like, "What would you do if you're in a battle situation?" I'm like, "I'd shoot the tank." He's like, "That's exactly what everybody would do." However, he put this invention that he has called Twilight, and then you could see the tracks of all kinds of military equipment went up over the hillside and setting as an ambush. The point was,
That's weird. We had Max Moore. There we go.
Lee Culver he's a world traveler, and we went down to this place called Corpsewood. Now, if you look up Corpsewood on the internet, it's very interesting. 2 people were murdered there, and we got to do an investigation there, and our meters were peaking, like double peaking, where there was something near us. I've had a lot of paranormal research experiences. I've actually went out to
What's that, rubber?
it's a microphone SM58 mic stand adapter.
Yeah. I was just looking at one of those.
I'm a musician. I'm out here in the woods with a huge PA system in my car, mic stands laying everywhere. And if you look over here, I have all kinds of lights setting up out here in the woods. Kind of freak people out. I look at the world completely different than most people. I look at it very optimistically and open-minded because I've been in every state in the United States. I've seen the most extreme things that people... If you sit there and watch TV and you watch like Finding Bigfoot, I brought... Natalie Hewitt's a producer of the show. I brought Finding Bigfoot to West Virginia. I took them to Greenbrier County, Pocahontas County. I'm the one that brought them here. And if you find me on Facebook and go to my videos, you'll find where they made a commercial for me. Bobo and all of them were like, we're sitting there, I'm with them, and they made a commercial for me.
Hold on, we got a question. We currently we're in Nicholas County, West Virginia, at a lake. That's all I'm gonna say.
Right.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of places in West Virginia. It's just not one place. I get asked all the time, it's like, there are a couple of Bigfoots in West Virginia? No.
A couple.
They're freaking everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's just like a raccoon. You could live in the city, and you could have raccoons visiting you in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't you not have a Bigfoot visiting you in the city? These are creatures that
Chris, we're not investigating, man. We're just hanging out, talking shop.
We're just hanging out. I'm
talking a little
beer.
talking a little Squatch.
Sitting near the campfire. Thank you for the wood, for bringing the wood up here.
Yeah, no problem, man.
By the way, that's a perfect fire.
What was I gonna say? I got sidetracked. It's all right, Chris. No worries, man. We're just hanging out.
The lake is down right now. They've put all the water into the gully down here. Class 5 rapids. Hey.
Oh, I know what I was gonna say. Like, you were talking about some stuff. We were talking earlier about people, reporting all these different Sasquatch sightings, and the numbers. The numbers are, just based off of my reports that I've collected, including yours. It's mind blowing because you have the BFRO site. Okay, that's one reporting site. Okay, on their site, there's 100. Last time I looked a couple weeks ago or a week ago, there was only 100 reports in West Virginia. I myself have over 70 that I've collected, and only 2 of those reports cross over. So, how many other reporting sites are out there? How many people don't report anything because they don't want to be ridiculed? They don't want to be made fun of. The numbers are staggering, just in West Virginia.
Chris Allen's Worldwide Monster Theater, my radio show. I had so many people that were calling after the show. They don't want their name out there because, let me tell you a story. This is in your book probably as well. My oldest son.
Hold that. Can you film yourself for a second?
Yeah.
While I get a chew. Just hold. Yeah, you're perfect right there.
My oldest son told me a long time ago, he was like, Dad, I'm not going to tell anybody about seeing the Bigfoot again because he got in a fight in school telling people about what he saw.
And he saw it with you.
He saw it with me. This is quite common with people that see something they don't want ridiculed. They don't want laughed at. See a big monkey in the woods? I'm sorry it has to be like that, but it is like that. That is the way it is. A lot of people come forward to my radio show after the show, and they'll get in touch with me. I have had countless people contact me after the show that don't want on the show.
Yep.
They don't want their names said. They don't want anyone to know who they are. And it's like, well, I was out hunting in a tree stand, a deer tree stand, and this thing came up as bipedal on 2 legs. I've heard countless stories like this, and it's not in just West Virginia. It's worldwide.
Yeah,
it's around the world. I've studied Sanjay, which is a friend of mine. He's an architect in Chicago. He has several books. He's a well-known author. He studied Vietnam very well. He has friends, the Forest Lady, who claims to come to her property as almost like family members that come to her property.
I've heard stories like that myself.
And
people leave food for them.
They do. A lot of people leave food for them. A lot of people leave like a little plastic mirror for them. I have found things that they have left in the berry bushes before, little intricate baskets that were twisted.
Was that you or me?
I don't know what that was.
It wasn't me.
I don't know what that was. It was a squatch.
It was a ghost.
They're
right. It's a ghost squatch.
Well, funny you said that because I've always wondered, curiosity. And this is only for you professional researchers out there. You naysayers, you're going to think I'm off the wall. If we have ghosts, would they not have ghosts?
Absolutely. I agree with you. That goes right along with the stories you hear of someone in the woods and they see a squatch and they're following the tracks. They've seen it and it's walking and they follow the tracks to it. It goes behind a tree and they get to that tree and it's gone.
Yeah.
What's to say they don't? Obviously, it's a large bipedal creature with a lot of intelligence.
The thousands of years of research of the coinciding of the American Indians, the Native Americans, skinwalkers.
Oh yeah, those
people
are some
that say that
freaky
they can
stuff there.
Change dimensions. There could be something there with alien life. I try to look at everything very open-minded, but there's a point that you can look at things open-minded that you might think to other people that you're crazy. I don't share all my opinions and all my ideas with people because I am very optimistic and I look at everything open-mindedly with everything I say. Because in your book, I believe I spoke about the When I went to Reelfoot Lake on West Tennessee on a bald eagle tour, my ex-wife and I spent a whole day and didn't see any bald eagles hardly at all. We paid 35 bucks for a tour that taught us how to look for the bald eagles. And my God, we've seen all kinds of them after that.
Mm-hmm.
When you're trained to do a certain research, for example, in the paranormal, there's probably thousands of paranormal people watching your program right now.
Actually, not very many tonight, but they'll see the replay.
The replay.
It's Friday night. Everybody's out partying.
Right. Well, all you paranormal people out there, my God, Dave has tens of thousands of dollars worth of gear on my table right now. You got so much gear that your inexperienced paranormal researcher is not going to even know what it is or how to turn it on.
Yep.
Well, once you learn this and learn your sophistication of your gear that you have, same thing with Bigfoot. And to end that conclusion on that, I personally think that if we're going to prove this beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the world's going to know that this is real, it's going to be in technology. Our technology is so advanced right now. Every year it grows better. I have a GoPro Hero 5 behind me, and they have a helicopter, a drone called a Karma, which one of the many. You can put this helicopter, which can stay in the air for a long period of time, and if you have a thermal imaging on that, at the same time while you're doing thermal on the ground with night cameras and researchers covering an area, that's how you're going to find it. That's personal opinion. How you're going to prove to the world that this is real is through technology, because these creatures, I personally believe, have an extremely great sixth sense ability. Have you been somewhere and you tell yourself, my hair's standing straight up, I should not be here? You may not should be there, because that's your sixth sense that you don't understand that's telling you, don't be here. When you listen to your body chemistry say, don't be here. And a case of point, back to the Gigantopithecus at Sherwood Lake, we found a deer body with a rock the size of a Nerf football inside of its chest, where something took a rock. There's no human on earth that can take a Nerf football rock and throw it and hit a deer so hard that it crushes its entire cavity, kills a deer, fresh blood running out of its nose. I experienced this. I had a camera in a camera bag that I couldn't even take the camera out because the fear of God came over my body. Get out. My sixth sense said, get out.
Yeah. You ever heard any of those stories, Chris? Like, I think it was 83 when Mount St. Helens erupted, and there were stories of witnesses saying they saw government choppers come in and carrying Bigfoot bodies out via chopper.
I've been there. I've been to Mount St. Helens several times. And not to mention the environment around Mount St. Helens, the air is so amazing. I've always talked about it. If you could take your pocket knife out and chop out a piece of that air, take it with you, the air is so amazingly fresh. For you city people, you would have no idea what I'm talking about. Mount St. Helens has trees that are enormous that have been there forever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many thousands, tens of thousands of acres of land that was devastated. When you go through a natural Mount St. Helens where it erupted, the life that was lost, the human life count was nothing because we were scientifically prepared for that. The creatures knew about that. But if you look back in history, and I tell each one of you watching this, I told you about the bald eagle in Reelfoot Lake. Research the earthquake that caused Reelfoot Lake, and you'll understand what I'm about to tell you. Deers cried for over a year because the ground rippled for over a year at Reelfoot Lake. It made the Mississippi River back up for 3 days, went backwards.
Yep.
And look at every case scenario to learn something new. For example, an Oscar. You know, an Oscar will turn sideways. A fish.
Mm-hmm.
An Oscar will turn sideways in a fish aquarium prior to an earthquake.
Never heard that one.
Yes, they do.
That's interesting.
And Oscar, I had the
Well,
largest.
animals, we all know that animals have those. They have extra senses than people.
We have it too.
But
We just have
most
to be
people don't
trained
know.
to use
Yeah,
it.
most people don't know how to use it. And I often talk about that too. The longer I've been investigating, it seems like the more in tune you get with your body, just like you talked about. When I walk into a haunted location, you can feel that energy in
Oh,
there. You can
yes.
tell if it's bad, or if it's negative, or happy or sad. You can feel that. And if you get the flight or fight response, you know that too. You know if something's right upon you and you're feeling like you're going to be attacked or whatever.
We had Eric Knapp, which owns The Haunted. He has his own TV show, and Eric Knapp actually filmed me. I was at the Radford St. Albans Sanitarium.
Yep.
Johnny Cash was supposedly there for alcoholism, and actually, I rented off the Johnny Cash family for 18 years in Tennessee while I was there. Um, June Carter's trio was Herb and Lori Bennett were my landlords of my property. But we went to the Radford one of my many times of being there, and I performed several Johnny Cash songs down where they had the clavicle at in the bottom basement. And we filmed this. The air actually dropped like 30 degrees while we're filming. I'm playing some Johnny Cash songs, and I felt this extremely cold, undescribable. I mean, like if I'm sitting wet out of a shower in front of an air conditioner, and I'm sitting there playing, and it got that cold. My voice
Yeah.
as I'm singing came out. You can see the smoke coming out of my mouth.
Yep, breath.
Yeah, I mean,
That place down there in the bottom of that place is just dark.
they thought I was crazy because
it's
I went
dark.
to the boiler room. I went to the boiler room of the St. Albans Sanitarium, and I'm hanging out there almost like I'm possessed. No lights, no nothing, nobody around me. And a group of people came down there and they found me hanging out. And a friend of mine, she sent me photos of herself, personal things that you just don't share with the public. Well, the man that supposedly murdered somebody there
Mm-hmm.
was behind me, and he was looking at her breast on my phone. Um,
That's freaky.
it was very freaky. I felt my shoulder
I
going
gotta tell
numb
you,
from the cold air.
When you're done, I'll tell you a story that happened to me there in the same
a
place
group of
you're
people
talking
walked
about.
in with their camera stuff that you
Mhm.
have, and there was an orb right behind me. And as soon as they walked in, this orb went across the room and went over in this direction. I closed off the phone because I was embarrassed. Somebody sent me a very personal image of their body parts. I turned it back. I'm a recording artist. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, I get stuff like this sent to me all the time. I turned it back on just to prove a point, to see if it would do it again. The orb came back and went behind me on this side, and this is all documented. The orb stood behind me looking at the pictures. Okay, now I'm upstairs. There's a bathtub upstairs, and it was almost like I for some reason got in the bathtub, and my head was pushed down under the water. I couldn't raise up. This is all documented. I couldn't raise up. It was like I'm forcibly being held under the water, and I'm being told what happened. There was a lady that was killed there.
Mm-hmm.
Another lady who had a child walked in and seen this happen. She was molested, raped, whatever you want to call it. The man was threatening her for her life. So she wrote a letter describing the full detail. And she had a child that was killed also. But she wrote a letter for her protection of what happened. And in one of the rooms upstairs, there's like a little doorway that goes back into the rafters of the attic. And she told me that that letter is back in there under that insulation back in there that shows exactly what she witnessed. That was the lady that was murdered under the water.
Mm-hmm.
Now, am I crazy? I don't know. I don't know the whole details. I'm new at the paranormal side, other than my radio show and having guests on my show. Call me crazy. I don't know how to explain it, but in my mind, there's something back under. There's like a little doorway that goes back into the rafters up there by where the bathroom's at. Okay, now another side of that, with everything being said and done, there's a room that they keep locked that they don't let people go in upstairs. They keep it locked off for the public because people got hurt supposedly in there before. Well, I'm listening to like a bunch of noise back inside there. I take my flashlight to the keyhole and I'm looking there. I can't see anything. So I put my ear up to it. And this is all documented on video. My whole face, throat, and all. was like somebody threw hot water on me or something. It was on fire, burning.
Yeah.
And I had like this big rash on the side of my face and my neck from holding my ear up to that door, listening to see what I was. I don't know how a ghost could do that. I don't know a lot about the ghost world, but it burnt the whole side of my face and my neck.
One thing about St. Albans is it holds many secrets. I was there several years ago. I took a group, I did a public event, and I had 15 people pay to come investigate. You know, we all took them as a group and investigate. Well, we were down in that boiler room, same place you were having that orb behind you, as you called it. And it's funny that you talk about, you know, you're looking at the pictures of the female. Well, I had two females there, and they were standing right next to me. And out of nowhere, you know, we're running a ghost box, trying to get EVPs, and you hear this smack, and a girl screams that's right next to me. And she's like, oh my God, something just hit me in the face. We're looking at her, and we actually see the handprint form on her face.
Wow.
And she and her friend got the hell out of there, and they were gone. I mean, they were only there like an hour, and they were done. They were gone. And it was just a really intense, you know, situation, because there's 15 of us in that room. Everybody's being quiet. We're trying to do an EVP session, and you heard the smack hit her face. There's people looking at her. They all said that she didn't do it. She was just standing there and heard the smack, and then a handprint right across her face.
Wow.
You know,
have you ever been to Middleton, Tennessee, to the Sorg Opera Theater?
No, I've heard of it though.
I went out there. I went out there a couple times, and Janie, a friend of mine, she took me out there and introduced me to people that were going to give me a tour. This was the first time I ever actually had an orb follow me around. I didn't even know what an orb was at the time.
I don't use the terminology orb. You know, if it's a legit thing, I call it a light anomaly, because an orb a lot of times can be described as dust, but there's different, you know, you got to really look at it on camera. There's two different things there.
Well, my radio show, now I got a lot of pros. You guys out there in the radio world probably know my radio show, Chris Allen's Worldwide Monster Theater.
Yeah, when you bringing that show back, by the way?
I talked to Robert today. I told him, like, listen, if you can't do it, you're going to get me hooked up where I can bring it back on, because I have a huge demand.
Yep.
I have a growing audience for it. We left off with almost 6 million listeners on my radio show. They want to show up now. And for the last year and a half, I've been promising to bring it up.
How can folks hear the old replays of that show?
You can find it on several different places. GHTR, GH stands for Grand Haven, talkradio.com. You can find it on Spreaker, yeah. Spreaker, you can find it on Spreaker. You can find it probably on YouTube. It's on all the social media sites. It's Chris Allen's Worldwide Monster Theater. You can find it on YouTube. That's how I find it. Go to YouTube, or not YouTube, Facebook. Chris Allen's Worldwide Monster Theater. And there's many episodes there. Now, it was a short-lived show, considering, but it's kind of like a George Norrie Coast to Coast. I had a lot of professional researchers on my show that I brought out there. But the point was, back to Sorg, we were out there, and there's this one, you can see a face. When you look at the photos of it, you can see the face in this little round circle that was following around. And it went and stayed in this one area. Well, I didn't know the story of it. I'm only filming this. There's this orb that stayed over this one chair. It wasn't like dust. It stayed over this one chair. Back in those days, there were a lot of, how would I say this to be politically correct for today's time? It was very racist back then. You had areas of the theater for the black people.
Yeah.
The high-class rich people, and the average person.
Well, it's a historical fact. I mean, it's not being racist.
You had restrooms for the black people. You had restrooms for the elite. The upper part was for the black people. In fact, I was in Katrina the day Katrina hit, and I didn't know people were still racist until I was in Katrina. And I videotaped that. Well, now you see today there's still a lot of extreme racism going on out there.
Oh, yeah. We won't get into that, though.
We're not. But I did know that racism still existed. I'm a country guy.
Yeah.
Come on, you know, I live in the country. I'm Cherokee. I didn't know that people were racist until I actually went to Seligman, Arizona, and I was stuck in a blizzard out there with my bodyguard, Ray Price, or not Ray Price, Ray. I don't know his Ray something. He went out there and he videotaped me out there. Now, while we're out there, I realized that a lot of people were very racist to the Native Americans.
Yep.
They didn't know that I'm Native American because I'm half Cherokee and half Irish. I seen that firsthand experience. That's bullshit, people. Come on. We're all the same color inside. But back to the story. Mr. Sorg built an opera house for his wife. She loved the opera, so he built an opera house for his wife. They have a mansion that he built, beautiful mansion. It's very eerie looking from the outside. It's really eerie looking. It's in Middleton, Tennessee, Middleton, Ohio. Sorg Opera Theater, Sorg Mansion. But this orb just sat over this chair, and we found out the man was pushed over the balcony and killed. In real life, he was pushed over the balcony and killed. His regular at the theater. His orb stays at his chair. It stays at his chair. I have all kinds of pictures of that orb sitting at the chair. At the time, I really didn't even know what an orb was. We were looking at all these pictures. This was back in my newer days, the paranormal world. You guys got a lot to teach me in the paranormal world. I've been on several investigations. Ghosts don't really scare me because...
What's up, DD Paranormal, Chris Gomez, and everybody else watching?
Hi,
Sorry.
guys. You know,
we're just, let me do a little recap. This is Dave. You guys know who I am. This is my friend Chris Allen. We're just sitting out here in the wild, wonderful woods of West Virginia. Campfire talk. A little bit of Bigfoot, a little bit of paranormal, just hanging out.
Hi, guys. I've been all over the United States and around the world, and the things that I've experienced, I've learned one thing. You have to look at things with an open mind, or you're never going to see
There's
things.
stuff out there we just don't understand.
You know, Charlie Daniels has a song called The Woolly Swan.
Love it. Love it.
If you listen to the words of that song, how
Yep.
true could it be?
Oh, yeah.
There's things in this world that you just won't understand, and if you don't open your mind and have an open mind, you know, because I've talked to dozens of hunters, and I'm like, you know what? My conclusion of Bigfoot with a hunter, if you're sitting in a tree stand with a rifle, you're probably not going to see a Bigfoot.
Andrew Cox, what's up? Yeah, I mean, there are stories of hunters, though, that have had squatches come right up to them. One guy was bow hunting, and he said, the story goes, he's bow hunting, and he sees this large creature, and he was scared to death. He didn't move. He's trying to be, you know, just act like he was not alive. And his arrow was hanging down, and his tree stand wasn't very high. The Squatch reached up and grabbed a hold of his broadhead and sliced the shit out of itself and went off screaming through the woods, tearing shit down.
Wow.
Have you never heard that one?
Never heard
yeah.
that one.
So, you know, there is stories of a lot of
I've
hunters.
had a lot of
Got
hunters.
a couple in my book, too.
I've had a lot of hunters call my radio show, tell me, it's like, listen, I'm an avid hunter. I've been hunting my entire life. Bigfoot's not real. You know, like, well, I'm sorry you haven't had an encounter.
Well, ask Jim Bob, who's also a hunter his whole life, and he had an experience.
Well, that's
You know?
what, this is what diversifies it. I've listened to people that actually have been hunters. I'm only talking about hunters right now, that have been in tree stands or been out in the woods and have seen, and a lot have not seen. And I've joked around. I do comedy too. You know, I don't think a Bigfoot's going to jump around a tree when you got your gun like, here I am. I don't think it's going to happen. You know, if you're out there with your gun, they're probably not going to stand out to be seen. On the other hand, there have been incidences where there have been. At J. Piercy Priest Lake in Nashville, Tennessee. That's right downtown Nashville, Tennessee, J. Piercy Priest Lake. My ex-wife was a naturalist in the forest system, and we hiked it all the time. We had a game warden tell us that he thought he was talking. He seen a black man standing out in the woods, a big black man. And as he approached this black man, wondering what he was doing out in the woods, he took off running and jumped off the cliff and into the water.
Wow.
He said, I watched this, what I thought was a man, jump into the water and vanished. He said, I'm looking into the water, waiting for him to surface. He never surfaced. He looked down as he seen him. He did see him in the water. He was swimming like how a bullfrog would swim, its hind legs kicking, how a bullfrog would kick. And if you look at the anatomy of a Bigfoot with big feet and a bullfrog with big feet, it's very propulsional for it to swim like that.
Yeah, that was his comparison. You know, that's what he compared it to. So,
you know, but he said that it swam off and it never came out of the water. It swam for a very long period of time. You know, and right here behind us, I don't know if your camera can see this lake. I have actually, they let 70 something feet of water out of this lake each year. I'm a power
See a
diver.
little bit of it.
I practice deep diving. I'm a diver. I'm a professional vocalist. I have 8 world top 10 hit songs. For vocal exercises, I power dive. It gives me stamina. Many times I swam 50 feet down and grabbed rocks and brought up. And I found out today that they let 72, 73 foot of water out of this dam. I never could meet the bottom over here. So
It's deep.
I didn't know it was that deep.
Oh,
I had
yeah.
no idea. But
This isn't even the deepest part.
No.
The deepest part's over at the dam. It's over
Yes,
300 feet deep.
Yes, exactly. But right there behind us, I've never been able to reach the bottom. I've had a lot of really awesome experiences reaching the bottom at different places, but right here, I've never been able to reach the bottom.
Well, speaking of unknown creatures, in this lake, there are catfish big enough to eat a man.
Yes, there are. But it's not just this lake; it's many other lakes.
Yep.
And
well, the New River and the Gauley, and these are some of the oldest rivers in the world. This mountain chain here is some of the oldest mountains in the world.
Next to the Nile River.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I look at all things. I've seen things. I've seen tracks of things coming out of the water that were unexplainable. Kind of look like how you find a goose track. You know, the 3-toe of a goose track.
Yep.
I found a 3-toe track coming out. We were at Sherwood Lake just after a blizzard. I went out and I bought almost $1,000 camera.
There's the moon.
I went out and bought almost $1,000 camera. Fully lithium batteries, recharged, everything. But when we got out there, the batteries were discharged just like that. And I would say my encounter then was of what was called a Jersey Devil. And I have this on my Facebook site if you'd like to see this. Find me at Chris Allen Southern Thunder on Facebook, KRISALLEN. And you'll find the video on there where it walked off the hillside bipedal. It scuffed its heel across the parking concrete curb, walked out in the middle of the field. It was bipedal, had 2 tracks, 2 legs. Okay, now from the lake, one walked towards it, and then they walked side by side. Had you found this out in the middle of the trail, if you know where Sherwood Lake is at, this is between the first parking lot, if you're pulling in, the parking lot to the right, to the parking lot to the left. The one walked from the lake, from the dam side, and they walked side by side. Now, if you found that, you'd think it was an elk or something, because it had like a cloven hoof on each side. Big cloven hoof. It walked out.
Well, you're talking about a whole different cryptid creature there,
We're
folks.
talking about a complete different experience.
Yep.
I'm researching Bigfoot, and these are things that we discovered that we were just not expecting to find.
We're running out of battery. So finish this one up, and then we'll close this out.
It vanished. It went out in the middle of the parking lot, and the tracks ended, and there was like a big swoop pattern in the snow, whereas like it just flew off. It just vanished.
That's crazy.
I don't know what it was. I'm not saying it was a Jersey
Goes right
Devil.
back to there's a lot of stuff out there that is we just don't understand, man.
That's exactly right.
And unknown creatures that are being found every day.
Yeah.
So battery's running low, guys. I'm going to recharge, and we're going to take a break, and maybe we'll come back here shortly, okay? It's Dave Spinks, Real Supernatural on YouTube. My buddy Chris Allen, Bigfoot researcher, paranormal investigator, country music singer. You name it. He's done it just about anything, everything.
Life.
That's right. And that's what life's all about to me, you know.
Yeah, I don't sit there and watch TV. I'm on TV.
That's right. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we may be back here shortly. Let me charge up batteries, all right? Have a good night, and see you in a little bit.